The first attempted recording for tonight was hijacked and destroyed by witches, who are mad at my anti-witchy ways. So here we are once again. This week coming up is Walpurgisnacht, a event in the occult calendar, which is mostly a fabrication from the 19th century. As a very brief rundown, the spring and autumn equinoxes are significant in the Celtic calendar. There's various pagan traditions which then celebrated these. There's some records in the 17th century that claim that witches would celebrate on some mountains at around this time. But really, much like most modern-day occult understanding, it stems from reactionary movements in the 19th century, who in response to the Industrial Revolution and rapid changes in the nature of work, immigration patterns, and the invention of telecommunication meant that there was rapid spread of ideas, rapid changes in how people lived, and rapid changes in who lived where, which is what led to lots of the racial prejudices and paranoia, which helped fuel some elements of the First World War, as well as things like eugenics movements, and, of course, Nazism. So, with all that in mind, I thought it would be fun to watch a couple of films which depict witches in a negative light, not because they're unholy whores who are abandoning the light of God, but because they are trying to develop and use occult methods in order to fuel and satisfy their own greed.
Yeah, that happened.
So, with that in mind, we watched The Neon Demon, a film from 2016, and The Love Witch, another film from 2016. How are you two feeling right about now? I'm feeling great.
You always feel great.
Oh, I do.
Yeah. Surprised, I guess.
Hello. Not great, I guess. I don't know, I'm having difficulty really feeling much of anything after these two films.
Yeah, you seemed pretty shell-shocked a bit into Neon Demon and never really recovered.
Yeah, Neon Demon has some stuff. I guess we'll get into it pretty soon. So yeah. I did not enjoy these films. I guess I'll just throw that out of the bat.
Yeah. I enjoyed one of them.
Which did you enjoy, Louis?
I enjoyed Neon Demon.
Yes.
I guess it's a very style movie. Like, it is all aesthetics. Although it does have some substance, I guess. I mean, yeah, it's there.
Sorry, it's just I literally have written here no substance.
No, there is a bit. It's the fashion industry is gonna eat you alive.
Yep, pretty much.
And that's that, but yeah, it kind of ends there.
There's some interesting moments in how it depicts the fashion industry. Obviously, there's basically no good people in the film, except for maybe bald guy who was in a bunch of episodes of Dexter.
Yep. Well, is he a good guy? I mean, he kind of...
Well, he's complicit in the fashion industry, so
Yeah.
if you consider that to be an inherent evil. But it does quite a clever bait and switch with him, where the way that his scenes are shot and blocked screams that there's going to be some sexual abuse of our lead character, but what instead ensues is the use of photography to have a borderline spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Which is an important part of the arc that the main character, Jessie, goes through, as she begins it as a naive country girl who's trying to make it big in modelling, and her steady ascension into both competency in the modelling industry as well as immense hubris. Yeah. And she demonstrates hints of this early on, but certainly the point... So the title, The Neon Demon, is referring to Jessie, specifically after she makes it big on the big fashion show, and you get that very trippy sequence with her walking through the diamond. Like, that's the point where she very flagrantly switches from being the naive girl to the extremely self-assured and ultimately self-destructive selfish person.
I really liked that scene because it was like a really unique way of doing a runway.
Yep.
'Cause you can't even see any of the people in it. You're just seeing kind of like the hints of like there's a suggestion there is flash photography going off.
Yeah.
And it's just weird. It's
Yes.
a very Nicholas Winding Refn movie.
It sure is.
Have you seen any of his movies, Matt? So this
No.
is your first experience?
Oh, okay. You should see Drive. You would probably like Drive a lot more than this one.
Yeah, should we say exactly how... I don't know how many people have seen Neon Demon, so I'm not sure if we should like describe at all what happens in Neon
Look,
Demon.
if you're sitting around for an hour-long podcast about films, I think it's safe to assume that you're prepared for some spoilers.
Okay.
I mean, we've talked quite flagrantly about spoilers without warnings up until this point on these shows, so
Yeah.
I think it's a safe assumption.
Sure.
I mean, I can certainly put in at the start of each episode for now, and if you'd like this contains spoilers.
Oh no, I wasn't saying spoilers. I just mean like telling people.
Oh,
like,
what the movie's
yeah,
about.
just giving yeah.
Actually, yeah, if we do talk about these movies, I should give a content warning for the Neon Demon at the very least.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Content warning, necrophilia.
Yeah, that, Probably, like, I mean, I probably the only time I was actually a little bit uncomfortable with this movie. That was just a bit. I didn't expect that.
See, I'm a horrible, bad, nasty, filthy person. And so for me, the bit that always makes me the most uncomfortable is Keanu Reeves holding the knife in Jesse's throat.
That was...
Like, that is such a wonderfully tense scene.
Yeah.
Even though I've seen this film 3 times, like, that scene really puts me on edge every time.
Yeah.
Whereas the necrophilia, it's just, way! Yeah, it comes absolutely... And what's even better is it is set up. But you still don't connect the dots until it happens.
I had a feeling that's where it was going, and then when she got up and locked the door, I was like, okay, this is exactly where we're going.
Mm-hmm. Alright, Matt, would you like to give us a rundown on the basic plot of the Neon Demon?
Not particularly.
Okay, I will give you a basic rundown of the plot of the Neon Demon. A girl moves to LA to try and pursue a modeling career. A bunch of conversations with some models happen, which foreshadow the rest of the film.
Yeah.
She steadily ascends through the modeling world, gets full of herself, gets some various things happen in a hotel room that are scary. A wild cat appears. Keanu Reeves does some bad things to people in the next room over. She abandons the one guy who's looking out for her in a somewhat altruistic way. I will say that he's genuinely being altruistic. When they're having conversations where he finds out her age, his first response is to immediately just go, no, I'm not going anywhere near that.
And then tries to kiss her in the next scene.
And then she makes advances on him, so then he goes, well, I guess it's okay. It's a muddly thing, and is useful for demonstrating that there's no good people in this film, and that Jessie is also much more worldly than she's letting on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, she's playing the act because she knows that is the optimized way to get results in the modeling industry. As characters explicitly state in this film, beauty isn't everything, it's the only thing. So, she gets full of herself, she has some scares in the motel, so she stays at the house of a makeup artist who she's become friends with, and the makeup artist first tries to seduce her for sex, is rebuffed. Then the makeup artist and her fellow co-workers decide to murder her and then eat her, because they think that will make them young and beautiful, is the implication.
Yeah.
Bit of a stunned silence here.
Just this movie. I'm still... I'm amazed it got made, frankly.
And that it had Keanu Reeves in it.
That was also very bizarre.
This is clearly a sequel to John Wick 2, where he's just in hiding.
A movie where John Wick is an even more horrible... Well,
It's a different horrible.
a different horrible.
This is a grimy, potentially sexually motivated creep who's just running a shonky motel, rather than John Wick, who's just social deficiency disorder. Antisocial disorder is what I'm after.
Yeah.
Antisocial murder man.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves plays the kind of character that the Punisher would just kind of kill in a random aside shot. He's just...
Yeah, he's totally just a character that would pop up in a procedural crime show.
Yeah.
And if the audience responds well to him in test screenings, then he would become just this recurring character that pops up. Anytime the cop needs to get some leads in the area, he just roughs up that shonky motel guy.
Well, I was thinking probably going to let you guys talk about this mostly because I think that a lot of the visual storytelling and the shots that happened in this film were quite to your liking. So I was just going to sit back and let you guys talk about that.
Well, thank you that you've made this clear, so we don't awkwardly wait for each other to begin talking.
Sure.
All right, that's cool. Well, I mean, as you pointed out, it is a very visual, very, very, very stylized, very aesthetic movie. And I did.
When we say aesthetic, you want that in full width Unicode.
Yeah, aesthetic.
Aesthetic.
And I mean, I'm trying to think because
I love the lighting. The lighting in every shot in this film is tremendous. Even when it's just daytime conversation shots, the lighting perfectly works to convey what it needs to. At the points where the scenes are most banal, it makes sure to keep things almost washed out in its lighting.
Yeah.
So it's just this is almost devoid of character because this is a safe moment.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the ContraPoints lighting kicks in, then you're gonna see some shit. And it's even to the point where towards the end of the film, when Jesse's being chased by everyone, it uses its contrasts of blues and reds that it's used throughout the film, which have gone from tranquility to danger and assertiveness. And usually there's a mixture of these in the settings you're in, but they're very, very clearly separated rooms. Yeah. Where, to begin with, it's the blue rooms where things are dangerous, but it seems like she's got a way out, and then she gets pushed into the red rooms. And yes, that's just nice visual indicators of what's happening on. There's also the recurring visual motif of animals that you may have noticed.
Yeah.
And so there's things like the wildcat running around.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of shots where Jesse's talking to Ruby, the makeup artist, where you can see pictures of animals behind her just out of focus. Okay. And then once Ruby's done the deed, there's a big taxidermied animal behind her.
Oh, yeah. There's like a leopard or something.
That's also one of the few which doesn't use the blue and red variants, but rather an orange and purple contrast for the lighting in that shot.
Yeah.
Orange and purple usually being visual indicators of villainy.
Ah, I did not know that.
Look at a bunch of bad guys. The Green Goblin's the most obvious example. There's a bunch of times you'll see that in stylized artwork. That vibrant green and purple is a sign of villainy. Unnatural colours.
What's his name? Thanos.
Thanos. Evangelion Unit 1 is kind of leaning on this. But it's also something else going on there. Which is Hideaki Anno really likes Prince.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I'll give another trivia while I'm here. If you've seen Shin Godzilla, which I believe we all have, you might remember that the atomic blasts that he spits out are usually blue in Godzilla movies, but they're purple in Shin Godzilla because Prince died during post-production.
Okay.
And so Anno went, I'm going to pay tribute to Prince. Godzilla in our Neon Demon, the Love Witch conversation. So yeah, if you are all about dank, nasty filth that's also stylish as hell, then you will probably enjoy the Love Witch. You'll probably enjoy the Neon Demon. If you're... We'll get to the Love Witch.
Yeah, I was going to say is... I guess the hardest thing about watching such a stylized movie is that it would be better for the audience to just see it.
Yep.
Because it is very, very visual,
Mm-hmm.
Remember you were saying a lot of scenes were music videos at times?
Yeah, it did feel like it was a movie intercut with music videos at times.
But there's usually insight into what the characters are thinking and the circumstances, and just the vibe of the film is achieved through those sequences.
Yeah, it wasn't just visuals for the sake of visuals. We can pick and choose particular ones. One I particularly liked was when she was in the motel room and she could hear Keanu doing nefarious things in the next room, and it kind of zooms out into that very isolating shot of her against the wall, which the other tremendous isolation shot
is if you've ever been to if you've ever been to a professional photography set, then there will be large sheets of white, and the way that they use the white sheeting is it's actually curved at the bottom to ensure that there's no distinct floor and roof, so that way you can do better work in post-production.
Yeah.
And so there's these wonderful shots.
It also helps to give like a really soft light on your your model and all that.
Yeah. So as Jesse steps off the general backdrop of the set into that area, there's this wonderfully disconcerting feeling, since it's a time where she's having to essentially step out of her own grounded safety and take the risk of something inappropriate happening to her in this exploitative industry. And so you just get this real unnerving sense of there is no one there besides her and the photographer.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you've got the way he's like, okay, he's kind of staring at her. And he tells everybody, thanks for your work, you can go home. And Ruby uncomfortably says, it's cool, I can stay. And he's like, nah, you go. And then he's like you assume he's lustfully looking at her and is like, take off your clothes. And
take off your clothes, then you got to take off the underwear as well. Hard cut to black.
Yep.
We're complete with a doom sound. So you go, oh, that's happening. And then it doesn't.
No, he kind of awkwardly makeups her up with gold paint.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
Yes, if I could go full pretentious here and say that this is a transcendence of an act from objectification to deification. Where, like, the use of gold paint is, like, this transformative moment for her of being treated like a goddess of the industry.
Which I guess is, like, her kind of precipitous moment where she then...
Yeah, that's then...
The hubris kind of starts to kick in.
Yes.
Another shot I really liked, which I guess kind of like illustrate, and I guess this is why like the style in a way kind of at least helps the movie, because it does tend to illustrate something about the characters. When she's standing on the diving board,
yes,
and Ruby comes down into the pool, and she's looking up at Jesse, and we get shots of Jesse, and because of the way it's shot and lit, the diving board disappears.
Yes.
And she looks kind of ghostly, like she's floating.
Yes.
I really dug that scene as well.
Yeah, if you're interested in just visually interesting filmmaking.
Yeah, it's something I'm really beginning to appreciate with Refn, is that at the very least, whether you enjoy the story or not, his visuals are very creative. Mm-hmm. He does feel like he's the cinematographer or the principal photographer somehow in charge of the whole movie. But they always look really cool.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to let you guys just talk about that kind of stuff, because I feel like that's the strongest point of the movie, and it's what the movie is mostly about, I think. The visual shots. So I just want
beauty is the only thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of does state that. So I guess it is kind of appropriate he's the person to make a movie about fashion.
I would say, I mean, I might as well say what I think. I just felt the movie just had no heart to it at all.
Yeah.
I don't think... there's a word for this that you always kind of feel like an ass for throwing around, so I'll try and work around it. It's just like... I feel like it thinks it's more clever than it is. And I think that a lot of... And at times I feel like, especially with the nudity and how excessive it is, I feel like the context, it feels more like an excuse for just excess and...
It's absolutely self-indulgent.
Yeah. And...
Yeah, self-indulgent would be a better choice of word than pretentious, I think. I think it ascribes exactly as much meaning as it needs to, and importance to what it does. Like, this isn't a film that tries to be a transformative moment in the way that we view cinema or anything. Here's a filthy, degenerate movie.
But what's the point of it being so like that? Like, I don't understand.
What if you're a degenerate who enjoys reveling in the filth?
I guess. It just feels like there's so many like beautiful shots here and such skill in its aesthetic and how it does a shot, how it does things. It's so annoying that there are like its story is so basic. Like I've wrote this like many times. Like it feels like I've seen this story a million times. It's like the innocent, or maybe at least she looks innocent at first. Girl once has dreams of being a big star and gets corrupted by an industry that's just terrible. I've seen that story like 10 million times. And this adds...
Mind giving some of your favorite examples?
I think Mulholland Drive did an alright job with it.
Oh man.
Yes, it did.
Let's watch Mulholland Drive.
I feel like David Lynch did a better job than this movie did. Just having a completely insane story that just looks and feels really off-putting and insane. I feel like if you wanted to watch this movie, you might as well just watch Mulholland Drive. And there'll still be a lot of sleaze for you and a lot of degeneracy, but at least it will be like, I don't know, better, and you won't feel quite as much an awful person for watching it. I just think that all the characters are just really shallow, and they're some of the most thinly done characters.
I mean, there's a part of me that wants to say that's the point.
Okay, but then what's the point of the movie then? Like what? Like
because it's a horrible industry.
Okay, well, what is your point then? Like every time someone does something about the fashion industry, it's always, well, it's hard. Like, it's like the easiest thing to do. Yeah. Oh, they're really like shallow and thinly done characters because, it's a very shallow industry. It's like, I just got nothing out of this film.
It's also one that continues to make millions and millions and millions.
Sure, we'll do something else with it then. I just don't. I don't know. I got nothing out of this movie.
I respect your point, man.
No.
Yeah.
I enjoyed looking at the thing sufficiently.
I'm just not sure if this movie does enough to
justify
having not a pedophilia, a necrophiliac moment. Like, and there's so many shots of just like, look at how, like, I don't have a problem with like nudity or wanting to have sexy scenes. I just don't feel like, as I say, it felt more like an excuse for them by the end, rather than them having a
not that many lingering shots. Look, it's very careful in where it shoots things to reduce the sexual content of the gays as much as possible. Until it's at the point where it's the witches bathing in blood.
I think the main two are the shower scene and Ruby, and the necrophilia scene, because it's intercut with shots of Jessie. And so I'm assuming that the point of that that is Ruby's fantasy.
Yes, because that's not what Jessie's wearing at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they don't really linger during like the scenes when she's. I mean, we don't even see below her neckline during the photo shoot, and I guess the modeling scene when they're all in their underwear is shot very square.
Yep.
And
most of it is reaction shots rather than the actual women. This is where something I was going to bring up about the production is that Refn hired a large amount of women to essentially do proofreads of the script and handle things like the cinematography, the blocking, and so on. Which has... He gave some elaborate speeches about trying to get in touch with his own femininity. When shooting this, Matt is losing it right now. It has a bit of a... I don't hate women, look at all these women friends I have to it when you put things that way.
Yeah.
It's the guy from the next movie shouting about how much he loves women. The libertine guy from the It sounds like
Does that bother you? Quite the contrary.
Unfortunately, none of you guys will get this, but it also sounds a lot like Jay Firestone, who's a producer on a lot of TV shows in Canada.
Yeah.
Who was like, I'm the voice of women on this show because I read a lot of Cosmo when I was younger. So I really feel like I'm...
Look at what an ally I'm being.
Yeah. Okay, you're probably right.
Thank you, Matt. I'm always right. I've never been wrong in my life.
Maybe it wasn't as excessive as It felt excessive at the time, but maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Yeah, I'm gonna just say it's probably not as bad as you remember, but if that's the feeling that lingers with you, then that's how you're feeling.
Yeah.
So it's not an experience that you want to have again.
Oh, definitely not. I also felt the ending probably dragged a bit, just because I didn't care about any of the
Yes,
that was one thing where I felt that literally the moment she got pushed into the pool, that could have been where it could have just like her staring up into the lights, but I guess that obviously would change some of the meaning behind
Yes,
the movie.
because then it's more about being sympathetic towards her
Yeah.
rather than paganism.
Yeah. 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 Eating eyeballs.
You miss the eyeball eating, which is great. You miss all the scenes of Ruby happily watering the garden, cleaning off bloodstains, just having a little nap in a grave that she's dug in the flower bed, happily with nature. The scene where she's lying before the moon, and that's certainly the moon is often associated with feminine facets of the occult. Mm-hmm. Sometimes this is a Taoist influence and a counter narrative to male-oriented sun gods. Sometimes it's just, hey, nighttime is when people aren't about, so that's when we'll get up to shenanigans.
Yeah.
There's a scene where there's this pool of blood spilling out of Ruby's nether regions. Some people read that as her dying at that point. I always read it as the completion of a youth ritual, and that's restoring her menstrual cycle.
Yeah, I thought she was giving birth or something. That's what I assumed. Yeah.
It's neat if you're into that sort of thing.
It's that thing where, like, once again, it's like, it's neat and the scenes are all great. And it's that thing where I was saying I just felt like...
You just wish that there was doing more with it.
Yeah, does anyone actually care about either of those two witches by the end of the film? Did you guys have much connection with them? Did you much care whether they lived or died?
I felt like the only character I had any... Like, Jessie was probably the closest to anyone in the movie I felt like I cared about. And that's kind of why, I guess, from a pacing perspective, I would have liked it to end when she died. But it doesn't make necessarily any sense for the movie for it to end there.
Yeah.
I guess maybe Ruby, because...
Yeah, I just feel like a few of the ending scenes you could chop a bit quicker.
Yeah.
It's like it has to be done.
Because you get the point of the scenes, and then it goes for another 40 seconds ish.
Yeah,
each scene.
Because there's like neat little details, like the fact you don't see in the pool, but you see Ruby look into the pool and then turn the hose to like clean
the strongest
out the blood,
stream. Yeah.
That you don't see, but she's clearly probably cleaning off the blood there. Like just neat little. And again, this is why it's. Yeah.
If this sounds like something you'd want to watch, check it out.
I would. It's like I'd recommend it to Refn fans who've probably already seen it,
or just degenerate weirdos.
It's an odd one.
You know what else is an odd one? The Love Witch.
Yeah.
Shall I start with the director talk?
Sure.
Alright, this film is directed, edited, partially filmed, written, and produced by one Anna Biller. Now, that's a lot of credits for one person in a film to have. And she didn't actually want to have as many of those. So, Anna Biller is a big nerd. Very much like an Edgar Wright type who likes movies, likes doing very, very reference-heavy content in her films. Very deep love for certain production techniques and eras of film. In her case, it's Golden Age Hollywood through to the 60s, which is why this film is shot with 35mm cameras. On actual film, used actual Technicolor restoration. There's some forum posts on weird cinematographer nerd forums by the DP for this film, where he goes into exactly the processes that you have to go through in order to achieve those processes, which is really useful information at a point where certain facets of film are a dying craft. Partly because of cost and partly because they're not as necessary, but there's parts of this film that look super great because of how they were shot.
Yeah, I love the fact that this is was shot on old school film, because you don't get that particular look anymore.
The red is so delightful.
It's close to things like Kodachrome and stuff, which people would be dying if Kodak actually brought that stuff back. But it's the way that your reds are just incredibly vibrant and blues get this really kind of washed out look to them, and it just looks so 60s and looks very cool.
Yep.
And yeah, I really, as a bit of a photography nerd, I can appreciate that.
Yes. So as far as production things beyond that goes, this is an interesting one to talk about the role of assistant director, which is a role that pops up in the credits, and is basically people underneath the director who do lots of menial invisible tasks. They're ones who need to handle things like insurance payments,
Right, yeah.
your booking of locations to shoot, making sure that everything's running around, people are in position, all this sort of stuff. It's a position that people can wind up in for a long part of their filmmaking careers. And it's one where you can become somewhat resentful of people who get more important positions. And it's also one where you can start to feel a bit like a conniving vizier in any sort of political intrigue story. Whoa there, microphone. And you can start to feel like you're a bit of a kingmaker when you're in the assistant director position. Because it's all the little things, which if they aren't done, the production just becomes a nightmare. And since this is a film about a woman who goes around killing men, with some times where this film uses scary words like patriarchy at a bunch of points.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of people on this film's production, in particular the assistant directors, decided they hated this film and wanted to make sure it never saw the light of day.
Really?
And so they actively, at every point possible, tried to ensure that the film's production would collapse. So they would incorrectly book dates, they would lie about filming permits, they would screw around with the paperwork on things like insurance, mess with craft services, or every little trick in the book to try and make Annabella throw her hands up and quit. And so that meant that she had to get even more hands-on, and she's a fairly hands-on director as it is. It meant that she had to wind up doing even more hands-on than she actually was, just to make sure the damn thing got done. Perhaps the scene where it's most noticeable is right near the end, when they're in the bar and everyone's yelling and trying to grab our lead character Elaine, screaming, "Burn the witch!" And there's a little bit of a punch-up there. That was supposed to be an actually interesting, a visually interesting scene with an elaborate choreographed bar fight. But the assistant directors managed to screw around with the bookings of the choreographer to the point where he never actually got to the set.
What?
And so that was Annabella doing the best that she could. With just, okay, we got all these extras here, try going there and there and there, and we'll do some punches there and there and there. Okay, that's the best we're gonna get. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Whoops. This really explains a lot about this movie.
So, would you describe this film, for the most of the time you're watching it, would you have described this as a period piece?
Yeah, until one moment.
Yes, that's one of my favourite parts of this film. So, the film is clearly a tribute to the 60s, and is set to look like it's middle of second wave feminism, a discussion on women with power being represented by witchcraft, all that sort of stuff. But right at the start of the third act, a character notices that the lead has left a ring sitting on a table, picks it up, pulls out her smartphone and calls us saying, "Hey, you left your ring, I'm gonna drop it home." What a wonderful piece of recontextualization for the rest of the film you've seen. Like, this isn't looking at the past, it's here and now. It's like, how are we viewing things about the world in today's perspective? It also gives things away early on. Because most of the cars used are period cars.
Yeah.
But in the shots behind the cars, you can see modern cars. And that's because screwing around with the filming permits and the like meant that when they were shooting the streets, people were still there and thus in their normal cars. So it tries to keep them out of focus and move away from them as much as possible, because it inadvertently winds up spoiling the gimmick a bit earlier on. But it's so early in the film that your brain tends to forget about it.
Yeah, I hadn't picked up on that. It would be funny to go back and just like pick through those scenes. This is such a bizarre movie.
Isn't it
like,
just?
I don't know where to start. And I don't know if I enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed moments of it that were rather amusing.
Yeah, it's at its strongest when it's being funniest, and at its most bad 60s sitcom-iest.
Yeah.
Like, the acting and a bunch of the editing is intentionally done. It's very evocative of I Dream of Jeannie in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. The main not the main character, but her final
The cop.
love interest. The cop looks so much like he should have been in I Dream of Jeannie. Like the perfect hair and the jaw.
That's strong, or perhaps even more like Darren from Bewitched.
Yeah.
You expect this guy to just
Yes.
bellow, "Damn it, Sam, I need a drink." Louis is attempting to do the Samantha twitch, by the way. He's trying to wiggle his nose.
Yeah, I mean, you've got...
He did as good a job as Elizabeth Montgomery, by the way, which means we'd have to fix it in post with a camera.
Yeah.
Gosh.
I mean, yeah, it's such a mixed bag, and it makes perfect sense now that I hear that it had, like, people trying to actually mess with it in the background. Because you've got, like, these amazing scenes, like what you mentioned earlier with Wayne, the libertine professor of English and French literature.
18th century, to be
18th
precise.
century. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it was. And him like taking drugs and her ridiculous like black but rainbow striped inside of the dress.
Elaine's amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
And then
And her beautiful delivery of the line, "I give the rainbow to you."
Yeah, I thought this was I thought that Adam was tricking us, and this was a porn film. at
yeah,
the
for a
start.
while there I thought the same.
See, that's funny, because the Neon Demons dialogue feels more porny in its direction to me. There's a number of scenes where people are talking just in straight shots in the Neon Demon, and the lines are so simple that they really, really feel like we're gonna have some porn. And when we got to the shots of the pool, I was waiting for some sort of, this is not the beach, this is a bathtub.
No, I was particularly thinking of like when she meets, I think her name is Trish.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, when she meets her and they go up to the apartment, which I thought they made a mistake for a second because it looked like a house to me, but apparently it was an apartment.
It's an apartment in the house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's subletting or something.
Sure.
Like, we can assume Airbnb now that we know it's 21st century.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that. I just thought it was a joke. When you were talking before about it, that being a reveal, I just thought that was a joke, like just a little gaff that you could, because
Yeah,
I
that's
never
what I thought it was as well.
yeah I never quite understood what this movie was supposed to be. For a lot of it, I wasn't sure. I thought it was a comedy, I guess.
It is a dark comedy.
Sure.
I would be willing to describe it as.
Yeah. Yeah, and like just the way that they talk to each other was just so stilted and.
Oh yeah,
the
that's
line-
intentional, to evoke bad 60s sitcom writing and direction.
Sure. And I remember writing very early on in the movie. I was waiting for the shoe to drop, and the shoe just never does drop. It actually just, how the movie starts is what the movie is the whole way through. And I remember for at least the first half of it, I was expecting something to happen, something to like break what was going on. Like this is like some kind of fantasy land, or like something is wrong, you know. And instead, it was no. This is the film. This is what is happening.
Instead, she built a diorama. And,
It's depicting reality through a 60s lens.
Sure.
I'm just looking for, since we've had to switch devices from which I am recording this from.
Yeah.
So I've lost the notes that I had prepared, and I'm trying to dig up a specific quote
what
from
is
the director.
that? I have no idea.
So
Some men haven't even seen a used tampon.
that scene's great. So I think we should talk about, this is just about the only role of the lead actress
Okay, yeah.
that she's had. You know, small indie actors,
Yeah.
but she's fantastic. She is exactly as stoic as she needs to be for the vast majority of this film.
That constant, like, kind of happy, like, almost, like, innocent whimsy.
Yeah,
Well,
but she's maintaining a certain level of kayfabe the whole time.
Yeah.
Because really, she's petty and vindictive and just she just wants to violently lash out and kill some people. There's a certain...
But I'm not killing them.
Yeah.
They love me.
Well, it was strange because she felt it seems like she needed to keep up that facade, even amongst her witch friends.
Yeah, because there's an implication. Actually, no, it's not even an implication. It's overtly stated by one of the heads of the coven that, look, dude, you're murdering people, and we're not okay with that. And she's just, I'm not murdering people.
And Professor King, who even goes into detail that the White Witches have rules against killing people. The Witch Doctor.
Yeah, so we've kind of watched two movies where the protagonists are not that likable.
No.
We've watched two movies with zero likable characters, which I think is...
Oh, you don't like the cop?
No, I thought he was explicitly shown to be an awful...
Yes, he is.
...piece of shit.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
the point, yeah.
But how good is that scene where he punches his co-worker?
I just think it is... I don't...
You're going off the rails, Griff.
It is. I think it is something to say that both movies had zero likable characters. Like that was not. That was not the point of them. But neither of them particularly felt the need to have characters that were.
Is that Toshiro Mifune?
Yes.
Oh man, it's Toshiro Mifune.
Yes, Toshiro Mifune has shown up
Yeah,
in our lives.
I have,
here.
unfortunately, an exposed screen showing me digging through Annabella's Twitter account. So it was after this quote, which was discussing on the visual design of The Love Witch. So here is a statement from the director. Elena's living in a dream world. In her mind, she is a princess from a fairy tale who only wants to give and receive love, so that's why she dresses the way she does, and why environments such as the Pink Tea Room and Renaissance Fair seem to spring up all around her. The design of the film reflects her inner fantasy life, but the reality is that she is a toxic narcissist causing death and destruction all around her. Like a criminal, she uses shortcuts to get what she wants, and her out-of-poised self-control masks a much darker inner reality. The movie is from her point of view, which is why we can never know whether or not she has deliberately killed anyone. In a murderer's mind, she is always innocent. At the same time, we have compassion for her, and can even regard her as some sort of heroine, for the way she asserts her personality and desires so boldly, for the way she gets back at men for objectifying her, and for her flashes of social awareness, creative output, personal style, and yes, love.
It's amazing how you can make a movie seem so much better in hindsight. When
This film's great.
I don't know. I was just
I feel like the breaking of her fantasy probably should have been a bit more
You would have liked an actual explicit shattering moment.
yeah.
Rather than
I feel
maintaining the kayfabe for the entire film.
Yeah, I feel like that would have been a more interesting, I guess, like conclusion to the movie.
That's what I meant when I said like waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah.
And the shoe never fully dropped. Instead, it just sort of dipped a little bit.
Mm.
Like I feel like the closest it ever got, and the scene that I liked probably the most was when it is Trish, right? It's like
Yes, it's
oh
Trish.
yeah,
Trish is a Witcher character.
yes, it's true. I like Trish a lot. No, Trish.
Yennefer's better.
That is true, but like you can still like.
You can like Trish.
Hi there, welcome to Witcher Fight Night.
No, so she's jealous of Trish at the start of the film because she has a husband and she does not. So she's basically has an affair with her husband, and as we see in the movie, having those affairs with the love spells or whatever that she's actually doing to them, eventually result in
Seducing by jump cut
yes,
and extreme close-ups, which are hilarious.
Which now that you've been telling me that mission statement from the director, I'm really I'm unsure how exactly she used her magic, and if there was actually magic or if they were just hallucinogens. Why the men died is now a mystery to me exactly.
Well, I mean, we know why they die. It's from her giving them poison,
Okay, so she's poisoning them.
Yeah.
Okay.
or at least in the first case, it's poison. Possibly some degree of hallucinogens impacting the mood of the second guy. And, well, I mean, it's a knife for the cop.
Yeah. Well,
That one's quite explicit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured that was the case with her husband, is that... Because it seemed like her story about her husband changed every time she told it.
Yep.
But we're getting very explicit flashbacks to him dying
Dying
from
of poison.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, eventually the wife kind of discovers this. There's a weird scene where she just starts putting on the witch
Well,
is...
okay, so
Dresses up as Elaine.
yeah.
like she's just had a little speech about reversal of positions and roles.
Yeah.
And so while she's there and she's in her grief, and she's then thinking about, well, maybe I can like look at how I view myself and see how she views herself by putting on her outfits. Yeah. Can I mention here the wonderful thing that Elaine has this flowing black hair the whole way through the film.
Yeah.
But it's revealed about halfway through that she's actually also got a wig on with her exact hair to make it seem that much fuller.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
That's the levels of delusion she's on.
Yeah, and while she's doing that, she realizes that Elaine has been doing these murders, including her husband. And I feel like that is the closest we get to the shoe dropping, because that feels very different than any other scene. It's the closest to like an actual scene, like not from the 60s. Like it feels more modern. It's just like a very nasty, like grimy scene of like this lady trying to kill her. And the words that are used by Trish is like, she calls her a whore, like words that you probably wouldn't expect to hear in a 1960s movie.
Yeah, you wouldn't see this scene in Bewitched.
And I know that I could get you could criticize me by saying that I should, that I need things to be more spelled out than they should be. But I would have preferred like a real shattering of the glass. Like actually, like you don't film on 35 millimeter for this scene. You film it in a modern.
Or you just switch the lighting, etc.
Sure, okay, but you make it like
a visually
clear.
distinct moment.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, okay, this is what her world actually is. Like suddenly it's a regular apartment.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example.
Any Satoshi Kon film.
The unfortunately example I'm getting is Red Dwarf. Is when Lister thinks he's making out with a lady, and then we cut to he's actually making out with a giant alien monster.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the few good moments in Series 6.
Yep.
I know that one of the problem with criticizing a film and talking about things that you'd rather have, you kind of just leave, well, you're not really criticizing the film, you're just saying the movie that you'd rather have. So I understand that, but I'm still going to say that I would have really I really wish this film had more like genuinely scary or intimidating moments. Like you would have like, say maybe 70-80% of the film be this just like comedy.
Yeah, you would prefer the film to overtly.
You know what?
Yeah.
Then you would prefer the film to overtly state the horror.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm more okay with you then having to think, as you've seen this context and this perspective, to go, no, without the film telling me, I am opposed to this view.
Yeah.
You wanted it to go full Stepford Wives.
Yeah. I just...
This is much better acting than Nicole Kidman in the Stepford Wives remake.
Well, even an indie actor can act better than Nicole Kidman, so...
Even an indie actor? Wow, rude.
Okay. Even an indie actor who had one role. Yeah, I just think this movie had a lot of potential for being, like, genuinely, like, intimidating and off-kilter. And I think especially because of... I'm not sure if I'm the only one who feels this way, but because of like the old way it was filmed, I feel like sometimes, how to put this, horror in like olden day kind of films, especially when you cut, like I feel like there's something where you cut from something that feels very old timey and all of that kind of feel, the kind of lighting. We used to talk about the colors as well. Yeah. If you switch suddenly to horror, I feel like, especially like modern day horror, in like a very short space of time, very suddenly, I feel like that could be incredibly shocking. Yeah. And like a real jump out of your like seat kind of moment.
Yeah. I mean, if that's what you want the film to be, that's fine. I'm fine for it to remain understated.
But I feel like I didn't get it, and that's a shame.
That is a shame, man.
Yeah,
we feel sorry for you every week.
Yeah.
I should stop feeling bad about making you watch things. Instead, I am expanding your mind.
That's alright, Matt.
Yeah,
I kind of agree with you.
Thank you.
That's cool.
Also, I ship Gar out with Dandelion.
Okay. Well, that's... I just think that the film could have done better to get across what it was trying to say. And I think if they had done the things that I just said, I would have enjoyed it more and I would have gotten its message more. Instead, I was just kind of like, as I said, I was waiting for a shoe to drop that never dropped. And it's nice to say afterwards of the film, well, it was actually about this, and if you think about it, clearly this one was in delusional land. But I feel like just within the viewing experience and the movie itself, I would have liked it to have broken kayfabe a little bit more.
This is something where there is a value to watching films multiple times, and that a really good film is one where you can get something different or more out of it on subsequent viewings as you're thinking about what it presents and have an understanding of where it goes when it's still starting to move.
Yeah.
And also that part of the value of art is in the discussion of art. That's part of why I'm doing this. Instead of me just saying, hey, you should watch this movie that I like. And then you would go, nah, it sucks. It's cool. I'm fine with your feelings about it. I think there are films which are built around triggering discussion in such a way have a very strong value.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add on tonight's experience?
I think both these films have a lot of women in like competition with each other. And I feel like we talked about that with Spider-Man 3 as well, strangely enough, where it felt like a lot of the women are like in constant conflict with each other.
Yeah.
And that both the films have like showcase a world where
They categorize man versus man narrative
okay, yeah,
on the chart.
sure. But with these two films,
Ooh.
they're both kind of showing a world where even though technically it's men that are getting the advantages, so like we have in Neon Demon, we have women who are desperate to stay beautiful and relevant. And it's usually for, we see who's in charge. I mean, we did see Christina Hendricks is clearly a position of power at the start of the film, but I feel like the main man of power is the
fashion guy?
The fashion guy who's technically in charge, and he gets to say things like, beauty is the only thing, even though he's not. I wouldn't call him particularly handsome or anything like that. I'm not trying to call the actor ugly or anything like that, but, he's not, like, a knockout. It's... And in that film, no one in that particular film... none of the women think, well, maybe there are deeper problems here. They're just trying to tear each other down in order to get a piece of relevance that will always be fading. And then we see in this film, it's a similar kind of thing where even though Elaine talks about, she says like some token things about patriarchy every once in a while, and she has a go at Griff especially, where they have like discussions between, they have the battle of the sexes kind of argument, but she still ends up, she kind of, like her, especially at the start of the film, like after she's already murdered her husband, she is so jealous of Trish that in the end I feel like her main motivation for killing and having that affair with, I forget what her husband's name is, unfortunately.
So do I. Yeah. No eyebrows, man.
Yeah, no eyebrows, man. She is doing it to get at her. She's doing it to have a go at that woman. She's attacking that woman.
Yeah.
So even though... she talks about how much she hates men and hates this world that she's in the end, the target of most of her viciousness is another woman, and I think that's interesting how both Neon Demon and the Love Witch will have women who should be trying to band together. And
that was ultimately one of the things I wanted to get out of this, is that these are both films which do that.
Whoa.
Thank you for bringing it full circle, man. I'm very thankful for that. Any other thoughts, Louis?
I'm not sure who to recommend the movies to.
Me?
But yeah.
If you're a weirdo like good old Pichy.
Yeah, if you want to watch some weird stuff. Neon Demon is for Refn fans, and people who likes lots of style. And I'm not sure who Love Witch is for. But there's certainly something.
It's really sad that I can't think of anyone really to recommend Love Witch in, especially after you gave that production story. Like, usually you'd want to, at the end of that story, you want to say, and then they made a fantastic movie that I loved. And
I love this movie.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about me specifically. Like, you feel like the Grinch a little bit, where I know I'm supposed to say well done, and I am saying well done that she completed her film, but unfortunately I can't. It's not a fairy tale from me, because I personally didn't enjoy it that much, which is a shame, because I would have liked to have said, I love your film. What's her name again?
Anna Biller.
I said Alison Brie, didn't I? I'm glad that she made her film, but unfortunately not quite to my taste.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had shit people working on your film.
I hope you get to make many more films.
Well then, that'll just about do us. We're just about at the hour mark anyway. Thank you for listening. Talk to you again
Thank you.
next
Bye.
week.
Bye bye.
Cut that part out.